Okay, 3, 2, 1.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Thank Furlough. It's Friday once again. Can you believe we're about halfway through January already? It's Friday the 15th, and pleased as always to have with me, or should I say I'm with, Jackie Mount, who, she's always on air. She's on air more than I am, but I'm only here so that you don't forget who I am and just keep up the numbers and everything else. So I think probably having spent yesterday lunchtime on air, Jackie's probably not got quite as much to do today as she would have done. I know we're going to get lots of queries from you. And at some stage during today's programme, I just want to have a very quick word about items of torture. Jackie.
Oh, that sounds interesting. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay. Because it's Thank Furlough, it's Friday, we really ought to start with furlough stuff. To be honest, I haven't got an awful lot. There's not much come out on furlough this week. We're well embedded into this new flexible furlough again now. The only thing I have picked up is for those of you in early years care, the way the funding goes towards nursery schools has changed. It's reverted back to a head count from January. Now, I've been contacted by one member who deals with this. Anyone who's involved in this, if you do need some help or guidance on that, probably best if you contact us. Anybody on the early years focus group, if you've got any information on that you'd like to share with the group, then you have the details of how to get information out to us all. So yeah, so we need to look at that. We need to check that anyone in nursery care provision knows what they're doing as far as the furloughing and the head count and the percentage that you're going to use. We need to do that. But to be perfectly honest, it's the only thing I've picked up on furlough. Earlier, a couple of months ago, there was a notice came out from HMRC that the rules for deducting national insurance contributions, if you are taking on a new member of staff who has recently come from the armed forces, now that is changing, and you actually can employ someone from the forces at 0 NICs for the first year, 0 employers NICs for the first year. Now, the details are starting to come out of how that's going to happen. As I understand it at the moment, it comes into effect from April, so from the new tax year, and there's going to be a way of reclaiming that, because I don't think they're going to be ready for you to put this through as a special NIC code until April 2022. So watch this space. We'll get some information out on you. We are hoping to do a specialist payroll update before the end of this tax year. So we'll have all that information for you, hopefully in plenty of time. Interestingly enough, I spent the vast bulk of this morning on a really lengthy HMRC meeting, which was to do with all of the information that HMRC and gov.uk put on their website. Now, this is a new forum that I've got involved in. And basically what HMRC are trying to do is to check that the information that they have, and we all know what their search engines are like. You know, you put in a query on the search engine, if it doesn't come up with COVID-19, it comes up with something from 1987 or whatever. And I'm not really doing HMRC down on that. So they are looking at how this works, and there was a lot of input on that this morning. But what did come out of the meeting this morning, two things came out of it that I think affects us more than anything else. Is one is the declaration of how much legally you can depend on HMRC for the information that they put up on their website. Now, they are looking at this because apparently it does say this is guidance only, and you cannot necessarily rely on what we say in a court of law. So you do need to be very careful about that. And again, it was literally discussed this morning. They are looking at updating their legal guidance on that. So as I get anything else, I'll get that out to you. And the only other thing that I picked up from HMRC this week is following on from the 1st of January, when, as you are well aware, we've out of Brexit, the VAT situation, everything has changed, tax, everything has changed. If you are in receipt of dividends from an EU company, you will have to check that you're not going to have to pay double taxation on this, because that's falling into the double taxation now. Whereas before we could just declare it, or you do it as foreign income or whatever. That is very different now. So again, watch this space. We'll get some information up to you. So just checking my notes. To be honest, at the moment, that's all I've picked up this week. We had quite a heavy webinar yesterday that I did on EU VAT, and I noticed we've got some questions in. Now, what I'm doing with the EU VAT page, and for those of you who haven't seen the Brexit page, let me just share my screen. Bear with me while I share my screen and show you exactly. No, why is this not working? Here we are, share my screen. Right, let's go into, where are we? Right. This is our internal one. This is not the one that it's got some extra bits on, so forgive me. It might be, oh no, let's have a look at this one. This is what you will get. Now, if you log on to our website and you go into resources and the Brexit page, which is here, the way this is working now is that I have a date on there where all the updates will be listed. So for example, yesterday on the 14th, we put some additional FAQs in there. So if you check that on a regular basis, you will see exactly what's happening. And also from yesterday, now we uploaded the slides from the presentation yesterday and now up there. So there are 3 sets of slides. One is on how to import on the VAT implications. One is on the basics of exporting at 0 rate from the UK. And what we did covered yesterday was how to charge VAT on the export sales. And then any other information you want, there are links in a menu at the top here. So if there's a particular thing you want to go to, you don't have to plow through all of this to find out what it is. But right at the very bottom, you will find some FAQs. Now, I've got to tidy this up, but as the questions are coming in, and with all the questions that I dealt with yesterday, I haven't got there yet, these will all come up on the FAQs. So we've got a few more on there this morning, and I have got a lot more to go on this. So yeah, that's all I've got, Gary. I'm sure we've got questions coming in already.
Yeah, let's have a look.
So
notes here as well, right? What have you got there? Are you on the main one? Let's have a look.
Yeah, let's have a look.
Hi, says Sandra. Hi, Jackie. Following yesterday's VAT update, I have a question. If VAT registered businesses purchase items from EU, Netherlands, but the item gets posted directly to the UK business's customer, does this have an effect on treatment of VAT? Many thanks in advance.
No, I don't think the delivery address is a problem, because if you're selling, you've issued the selling invoice, presumably the goods are being imported in your business's name. So you will go through the import VAT and you're selling at 0 rate, but you're charging, you're buying. So you're paying the import VAT on that. And that should go through your postponed VAT account as normal on that one, Donna. If you find that it's different to that, do please come back and let me know. But I think that's the answer to that one.
Sandra's got an interesting question. Are HMRC phone lines open evenings and weekends? Seem to be conflicting info on the HMRC's website. To be honest with you, I've not come across using them at the weekend. So what do you know?
They always were open at the weekends. At the moment, of course, they're so busy with Brexit queries, it's very difficult to get through anyway. But I think they always were open till about 8 o'clock in the evening, and weekends until about 6. Now, whether those opening hours have changed, I'm not sure. It may have changed because all of HMRC staff are working at home the same way as we are. And I'm not 100% convinced that their telephone answering system is quite as efficient as ICB's, but I'm not sure. But I have to say, evenings and weekends was always the best time to try to get in touch with them anyway, because they're slightly less busy.
An interesting one there, and something that crops up all the time. A client receives a tax demand, threw it in the bin. Now she's sorted out. I mean, when I was running my own small business, it was always the best thing to do. If it was red, you didn't open it, yeah. So yeah, a lot of businesses do that. Sorry about that, Sandra. You're going to have fun with that one.
Yeah, what I would say to that, Sandra, is if you are an agent, I don't know whether you've got access to the tax returns, because you might be able to download it again from your agent account. If you're not an agent, they're not going to speak to you anyway. And if you've gone to get your client to talk to them, I see, I will have to go to the client to help him talk to them, but I don't want to go if the phone lines are closed. To be honest, I don't know the answer. I'd probably have to go and look and see what their opening hours are for the SAT helpline.
Just on the other chat line, I had a client, who's this from? Julia Williams. Hi, Julia. I had a client that I P45 at the end of October as he started work for a company via PAYE. The job didn't work out, so he has come back to the company. Can he be furloughed?
I think the answer to this is probably yes, because the if he was on an RTI prior to the 31st of October and he's since left, you can bring him back, and I think you can refurlough him straight away, because that's the whole idea of people who'd moved jobs and lost their jobs because companies had shut down.
It depends
so
also
I think, yeah,
close the company down, or whether he was going to be a sort of a freelancer subcontractor and they wanted him on the payroll. A lot of questions to be answered there, I think. But
but
again, I don't think they're trying to diddle anybody out of furlough if they deserve it and are definitely merit it. So I think that would sound all right to me. Another one for somebody called Jackie. Hello, Jackie. I understand from previous information that if you paid an employee who was on furlough any holiday pay, this was unrecoverable in your claim. But reading the HMRC website, it looks as though this has changed and 80% of the holiday is part of the claim.
It has been from day one. Holiday has been reclaimed as from day one. You have to pay them 100%, but you can reclaim back the 80%. So that's not changed. That's been in there from the very start. So if you have had people who have been on holiday and you haven't claimed for them, it's probably too late to go back and claim it now, because all the earlier claim periods have closed, but certainly from now on. Now, what I would say is if you're involved in holidays and furloughing, do be very careful about bank holidays. Today is the final deadline for claiming December. And of course, we have the Christmas and New Year's bank holidays in December, but you have got until the 28th to make a change to your claim for December. So anyone who's furloughed over the Christmas period, if whatever happened, do check what's happened with holidays, because don't forget, with holidays, it's 28 days a year, including bank holidays. So we have 3 bank holidays in December. So therefore, you've got to decide where you're going to make them take those 3 days as holiday, in which case you pay them 100% and claim back the 80%, but then they've used that holiday up, or whether you're going to allow them to carry that holiday forward, in which case they were furloughed, but they're entitled to take the holiday at any stage, I think, within the next 2 years. So holidays is something to watch out for.
I always find the bank holidays now being merged into holiday, they do cause a bit of a brain ache for me when I'm trying to figure out what anybody's entitled to, because part-timers who don't normally work on Mondays or Fridays or wherever it is anyway, they still have to have a bit of bank holiday calculated in. So even if they have the day off anyway.
Bank holidays, if you don't work on a Monday, well, yeah, I must admit, bank holidays, if you don't work on a Monday, is the difficult one. I mean, normally, if you're not working, it's not a working day, then you pro rata the number of holidays anyway. But I suppose it would be, oh, yeah. I'm not even going to go on that one today. The brain is not functioning that well today. It's been a really, really long week this week.
Well, we are hoping to do something shortly on payroll and HR. As I said to you before, we think we've got somebody lined up for next week, so look out for that, everybody, because payroll and HR are real sources of major questioning from our members. You know, the number of queries we're now getting on that, which is great that more and more of you are doing payroll. Jackie started the payroll exams many years ago, wrote the papers, marked them herself as well, or various other things. And payroll does change a lot. So it is something that you've got to get right.
It's changed hugely in the last probably 6 years, because we've now got auto enrollment for pensions instead of voluntary pensions. The holiday requirements have changed. The way you calculate holiday has changed if you've got part-timers or zero contract hours. And, that was even before we hit furloughing and COVID and things. So, yeah, not good at the moment. Harriet's just put up a note, watching on Facebook and missed the content about early years provision. Right. Early years provision, the way that the early years is funded has changed. It's gone back from the 1st of January. As I understand it, it's gone back to it being a head count taken at the middle of January. And that's what the funding is based on. Now, HMRC have made a provision for the fact that if you're on very low numbers at the moment and your head count is low and your funding drops because of that, that's going to reflect on how much you can claim on a furlough when you furlough your staff. However, if we come out of lockdown, or when we come out of lockdown, but it depends on how far through this term this will happen for nurseries. And of course, I think nurseries are still open at the moment. As your headcount increases, I think what HMRC are allowing is for you to amend your funding figures up to 80% of what your headcount was this time last year. Now, it's not an area of expertise from me, but hopefully, Harriet, that will give you an idea as to where you're going with that. There is quite a lot of information out there on that. So, but send us an email if you're stuck and I'll try and find some information for you.
Are you still running your working group on?
Only as and when we need it. I mean, it's there and we can have it. If focus group members want another meeting, then yeah, anyone who's listening, if you're on that, let me know and I'll set one up for us. So it might be useful to do a catch up.
Well, whilst we give people to catch up with their questions, if they indeed have any, just a couple of things I wanted to mention. There's been a bit of discussion taking place recently on the forums about subcontracting, and specifically subcontracting to people who are more highly qualified than you are. And there was one of our members who said, I want to subcontract to a chartered accountant because he will do the year-end accounts, which I can't do. Now, the answer, albeit on the forum, came back and said, oh, no, you can't do that. If you look at the ICB rules, they were there to stop you doing something that you were not qualified to do and therefore would do incorrectly. So if you're not qualified in payroll, you're not qualified to do self-assessment tax. And in the old days, you're not qualified to do limited companies if you've only qualified to do sole traders and partnerships. It is not there to stop you using a more highly qualified person to carry out some of your work. And I know that some of you are employing accountants who are working full-time in an accountancy practice, but at weekends, let's say, are doing year-end accounts for you and they're billing you for that. Now, as an ICB member, you, as the head of the practice, are still ultimately responsible, and you therefore need to check that the person you're subcontracting to is a bona fide person and all that sort of stuff, but they are qualified to do what you're asking them to do. And then, as far as we're concerned, that's fine, because your certificate says you can do anything that you as a practice are qualified to do. However, I don't think it will be the norm. I don't think it should be the norm, because with FRS 105 and 102, the majority of companies you can now, as a bookkeeper, do all of the year-end account stuff for. But so I just wanted to clarify that, because the problem with forums is the ill-informed, the unsuspected, and the unsuspecting all sorts of get together in a group, and eventually you go around in an ever-decreasing spiral and come up with the wrong answer. But so if you have got queries like that, it's always best to check with ICB. Give us a call. The call will probably get answered a lot quicker than an email. We are plowing through the emails. We've got 4 staff at the moment just getting through membership application, the backlog. So yeah, the team is working hard, but so if you've got something like that, please let us know. And again, I would just stress that a lot of information that comes out of forums is not very well informed. We had one recently, which actually was picked up by HMRC. I'm not quite sure why. My client is getting close to the VAT threshold. When do I need to register? And somebody came back with the response, you don't. Get him to form a second company and halve the turnover. That's avoidance, and that is not right. And so, you know, you can be misled. This is why we have a technical helpline. This is why we've got Jackie and a team of other people who spend a lot of their day answering, you know, what to them is something they do time and time again, but to you is something that's cropped up for the first time. It's very important to you, and it is important you get it right. Talking of which, we've had a query this week. I haven't found out the answer to this one. I'll leave this one with Jackie, actually. But apparently, if your client is providing items which can be used for torture, you now have to get a special license if you're selling it into the EU. Well, first of all, I was shocked that anybody would put on anything. Yes, this is going to torture people, but apparently it can. The reason that our member wanted to know was they have a client who sells certain items which can be used for torture, but quite often the person being tortured is paid, how can I say this, is being paid to be tortured. So it goes through a whole list of things, including manacles, thumb screws, and things I didn't even know what they do, which are presumably used by governments to torture people or whoever. As I say, I find it incredulous that anybody has a trade in that, you know.
I think you'd be surprised, Gary. Yeah,
you're sitting in some building somewhere saying, you know, I need to torture somebody. Who do we call? You know, hello, have you got any thumb screws?
like
Anyway,
Ghostbusters.
So perhaps, Jackie, you might be able to chase this one up.
I can certainly chase it up for you. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't know if you saw my face on the screen. I was trying very hard not to giggle then. I mean, it's not funny, actually. It can be very serious. And if you have a client in that area, then yes, it's a huge problem. I do know that the whole concept of licenses when trading into the EU is different, because when we were in the EU, everything was free trade and free movement, everything, and I don't think it applied. But now that we're actually exporting into the EU, it does actually say that you may need a license to export certain goods into certain countries. Now, it doesn't specify, and I was thinking along the lines of live produce and phytosanitary equipment, you know, live plants and things like that, as we have to import that stuff to make sure that it's safe and legal. And you know, without these licenses in this paperwork, just digressing slightly, you will have seen probably on the news over the last 24 hours that the Scottish fishermen have had real problems in getting the licenses and the paperwork and the customs paperwork correct to get their fish and shellfish to Europe, and it's been delayed and it's not been suitable for sale, and there's a whole controversy going on about that now. So there are, you know, so anything like that where you need licenses, but I will certainly look into that for you, Gary.
Yes, it is difficult, but I actually know that, funnily enough, it was something that was brought up a little while back, and I think two of our members of council, funnily enough, have clients, and they were talking about the fact that they deal in these things. Not, I have to say, for any form of torture as you and I would know it, but so I don't know. Adult
entertainment companies, I would imagine.
Yeah, exactly. Although you and I could probably argue about
someone else, Jules just said, can't help giggling over torture. Not that it's funny, but I know exactly the same thing. I mean, your whole concept is to laugh, and I think we have to look upon this as probably part of an adult education sphere of what a number of people might like to become involved with. But I'll look into it and move on. Okay, couple of comments here. Donna's come back. Hi, Donna. Bank holiday working or not, I moved my working days to Tuesday to Thursday from Monday to Wednesday when I worked for the local authority, as it worked out at extra days off. Yeah, because if your working day is a Monday and everybody gets Monday off, you would probably have to count that as a holiday, but for you it's a working day. Now, if you're working Tuesdays to Thursdays, of course, you're not working Mondays, but I wonder whether you'd get paid for it as a holiday day. Not quite sure on that one. How does that, that'd be interesting, Donna. How does that work out with your holidays? I would appreciate, perhaps we can pick up on this, Donna, because I'd like to see how many days they actually calculate you, because it's 20 days plus bank holidays. And if your working days are not bank holidays, I wonder how that works out.
I think in the past for our ICB team, we've had to include them even for people. I mean, it's particularly the case when people come back off leave for having had children and they come back part-time, etc. We have worked something on that. I mean, the other one that's cropped up this week, which came up with ICB many, many years ago when we were down in Hampshire. One of our members said that she had a client whose staff had been unable to get into work because of the snow, so they closed the factory for the day. And 11 people from the factory who were on holiday that day had then said, well, we want another day's holiday. And as I understand it, they are entitled to it.
Yeah.
If it wasn't a working day for everybody, you can't have a holiday from that.
Yeah, you should get the extra day's holiday. No, I agree with that. Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Right. Angela says, I have 0 hours staff furloughed since March. So using 1920 pay data to calculate. Absolutely correct. I paid holiday pay based on 52 worked weeks calculations. Absolutely correct. But claimed furlough for holiday hours at 80% on the furlough calculated rates only up to the usual hours calculated maximum. Is this correct? Yes. You're using your normal working hours at the hourly rate that you've used since March. And if they have not been working since then, you would use the calculations that you did. You've got to go back over the 52 weeks working, work out what the average number of hours was that they worked, and that's what you base your holiday on. You pay them the full rate at February, or their average rate, and we all know how to calculate that now. And then you pay them the full amount and claim 80%. Hope that makes sense.
But said, as I understand it, bank holidays, of which there are 8 in the year, if you work 50% of the working week, then you get 50% of the bank holidays you're entitled to take when you want. Yeah, I think that is it. Even if your working week doesn't include them. No,
that sounds right, because it is 28. Well, it is actually 28 days, and that may or may not include bank holidays. Because if you remember back in the years gone by, when we were an awful lot younger, if you worked bank holidays, you got paid time and a half or double time. Now it's considered to be a normal working day unless you take it as a holiday.
Yeah, I think that's the case with weekends as well, though. Now, isn't it? It's become 7 days, and you can work a normal day during any of those. And I think that was
it depends on the number of working days that you do.
And Karen Ingold, thank you, Karen. She's just said, pro rata 4/5 if you have one.
You have one, right? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it does. It definitely.
As I said, it's been a long week, and the brain's probably not working quite as fast as it normally does. Loretta's come in. These are some. We're moving rapidly into. Sorry, I'll pick up this one on holidays from Carol. Hi, Carol. Leave is actually meant to be based on 5.6 weeks. It just happens to be that a 5-day week means 28 days. Yes, you have 5.6 weeks, which include a year, which includes the bank holidays. So it's 28 days because we work 5 days a week. Yeah.
Sarah Dodger says
it is pro rata.
Sarah.
Thanks,
Nice
Sarah. Oh, and thanks for all your messages today, Sarah, by the way. They've been very helpful. Sarah knows what I'm talking about. Right, Loretta's come in saying, hello, a client of mine has been posting supply invoices from the USA as 0 rated. This is for services, not goods. My understanding is that it should be outside the scope. Are there any circumstances when 0 rated would be used? Right, now, actually, I've had this conversation with a couple of people, because if you look on the HMRC website, they use this term outside the scope of UK VAT. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't appear on the VAT return, because any services that you purchase for use in your business should appear on the VAT return, the bottom half of the VAT return. Now, if you're going to use this as outside the scope and use an outside of the scope VAT code, it's not going to appear. So it's the same with some of the export stuff. They're saying it's outside the scope, so it should be 0 rated. Now, those of us that are much more specific on the VAT codes that we use have got a problem with this. So I would say that's coming in as 0 rated. It might be that it has to be reverse charged, and you have to show it in boxes 1 and box 4. Because if you were buying that service from within the UK, you would be showing the VAT charged on that service in box 4. And we know now that when we export a service to somebody in Europe now, we export it and we sell that service at 0 rate. But for the people in Europe, it has to be shown as a reverse charge on their VAT return. So if you reverse that and we're buying in services, my view is at the moment that I think it should be charged as a reverse charge, which is basically an in and an out. Now, again, please, if someone doesn't agree with me, do come back and argue. I'm well open to heckling, as you know. Do let me know if you disagree with me. But at the moment, I'm thinking reverse charge.
Are we done on that? Just a piece of news about ICB globally. Just before we came on air, I had the pleasure of speaking to Takashwa Sharma and his wife Priya, They are currently sitting there with hammers and nails and contractors and various other things, creating ICB's new office in Mumbai. We've always had a presence in India, and we've had people there who sort of represented us, but now we're going to have our own formal office. And yeah, so congratulations to Priya and to Takashwa. We look forward to supporting you. I'll try and get them to come on one day next week or the week after, once they've donned down their hammers or whatever, and talk to us, because it's quite interesting. They are so excited about having the ICB badge behind them, and we already have quite a few members out there, but there is a big recruitment drive going to take place, and they've got people queuing up already. In fact, people have been turning up and knocking on the door, having heard that this was happening, to see if they could join, which they can't at the moment because their internet isn't in yet. Their internet's coming in next week sometime. But anyway, congratulations to those two. And yeah, yet another ICB outpost. So we're in 42 countries. I think that's sort of office number 9, I think. I need to check.
Oh, that's fantastic news, because we've worked with over there for a long time. So I'm really pleased at that development. That's fantastic news.
Yeah, yeah. The world is actually getting a lot smaller in terms of software. So you know, they tend to use exactly the same bits of software. So we'll be talking to people whose names we all know and we work with already, the likes of Xero, Sage, and Intuit. And a lot of the other people as well, and yeah, it's good to see it all coming together, and we're all sort of using one unified common system, which is great. Not quite yet all onto international accounting standards. I was reading something the other day, and that started in the 1970s, and they were hoping to have everybody in line within 10 years. And here we are in 2021, and some of the major companies like America, Russia, I think China as well, are just not using them yet. So, and we don't use them obviously in this country, other than for medium and large companies, or those shareholders. Yeah, and most of the differences are terminology, I think. But I know, talking about subcontracting, that some of our members have found it that people with other qualifications have not been singing from the same hymn sheet when it comes to final accounts, but those little teething problems sent to us. Anyway.
Actually, Gary, there's a couple of follow-on questions from what you said there from Fran and Alistair. Following on from the comments about subcontracting and bringing in people, are you saying that the prime contractor can be accountable for the subcontractor's work, or does that accountability flow down to the subcontractor?
Well, it does, but I go back to something that happened to me many years ago. I hadn't been driving very long, and I was sitting at a queue at a temporary traffic light, actually on the English Bridge in Shrewsbury, and a gentleman who I've forgotten his name now, actually, but a very nice man, but he was looking at the water and missed the fact that we'd all stopped because there weren't normally traffic lights there, and he hit a car in front of him with such force that it forced 2 other cars to have a sort of a domino effect going forward. And I sent him a letter saying, this is my car, you've ruined it and I want you to pay for it. But in fact, when it went to solicitors, I had to get the money for my damage from the car that had been pushed into me. He then got that plus the damage to his car from the car that had been pushed into him. Now, I mention that because that's the basis really on this. If you're sending out the invoices, whatever is included on that invoice, you are responsible for. So if you are invoicing for work by Joe Bloggs, Jane Bloggs subcontractor, yes, you are responsible. And if eventually it's found that you are culpable and your PII kicks in, then you would in turn sue the subcontractor whose PII would kick in, which I've forgotten to mention. You do need to check they've got professional indemnity insurance, because if not, then anything like that happens is going to struggle a bit. Now, the other thing to bear in mind, as I've said, is that you being responsible, you must make sure that you know what they're doing, and you know that they're qualified, and you have a reasonable belief, and reasonable is an odd word to use, but I can't think of a better one. You believe that the person is doing the work properly. Now, if it's way beyond your scope, then obviously you should not attempt it, because there's no way that you can judge that. But if, for example, you're studying for your 105 and your 102A, and you want somebody to cover meanwhile, and you know roughly what's required, etc., then I think you can probably just about get away with it. But really, it's a stand back, if you like. So yeah, it's never an easy one. Now, the other thing is, we do get a lot of people saying, I want to subcontract to bookkeepers in the Philippines, or we had one recently in Canada. Why? You know, there's enough work, enough people wanting to do the work in this country. Not sure it's right. And I think it's a moral thing rather than anything else. As far as I'm concerned, we should not be subcontracting bookkeeping work out to bookkeepers in another country. You should look at it in here. But again, you are totally responsible. And if they make a complete mess of the accounts, you can't exactly go knocking on their door asking for some sort of recompense or comeback. So be very careful with that. And also make sure whatever happens, you've got a very, very strong contract. And you know, they are covered for, they've got a license, they are allowed to trade. So if they're an accountant and they're employed by Price Waterhouse or somebody like that, the fact that they do work at the weekend doesn't mean they get away with having a license, because they are treated then as a separate person. They have to have a license to allow them so that we know that they're supervised for money laundering purposes. So this money laundering, it's sort of an all-encompassing, gets you whichever way you turn, really. And that's the main thing to do. I mean, Jackie, over the years, we've come across this a lot, haven't we? Where people have trusted a third party in order to keep the client. We've had it, and
it's gone horribly wrong, because I think you're still responsible for submitting the work. If the client is in your name, you are still responsible for that client. So we have had members in the past who subcontract work out, haven't kept an eye on it, assumed that because the person they subcontracted to happened to be a member of another professional body, took an assumption, and actually that particular person had got a lot wrong, and it did go very, very nastily wrong for this particular member, who I think decided it all got, you know, far too much and wasn't going to carry on with that anymore. Interestingly enough, talking about the qualifications, just to pop in a reminder that as it stands at today, there is no longer an automatic parity of qualifications between GB and Europe. So they are looking into this again, and they are hoping to come up with a memorandum of agreement within 3 months. And accounting was one of the professions that was specifically mentioned. So at the moment, watch out. If whatever we're doing, if you're using people in Europe, then you need to make sure about the qualifications. Now, following on from what you said, Gary, about qualified people, Pauline's put a comment up on the question and answer. With regards to continuity of practice agreement, would I be allowed to set one up with a firm of accountants? Well, I would assume the answer is possibly yes, but the proviso is the main accountant, however, is not formally qualified, i.e. he is not a member of a professional body.
Well, if you are employing the practice, and the practice decide to use him, it would be better if you didn't. But if the practice are using him and they will guarantee the work of the practice, then you do have some comeback if anything goes wrong.
But if he's the main accountant and the lead in the body, the fact that he's using the term accountant, I mean, you, as part of your due diligence, you would probably have to look at his money laundering, his AML, what his practice license is. Does he have professional indemnity? Because as I understand it, Gary, I might be wrong, that professional indemnity is still as yet not it's not a necessity. I know HMRC are looking at it, but I think if you're covered by HMRC for anti-money laundering, I'm still not 100% certain that individuals have to have professional indemnity as yet. I know they're looking at bringing it in. Yeah,
no professional indemnity, and actually no qualification. And it's something that's cropped up again at the moment, actually, because it's just been agreed that the accounting and legal professions are going to have to pay for an increased levy to cover the cost of policing the anti-money laundering, and it's working out at 100 million a year. Now, what the government has decided is it's going to charge the professional bodies for this. So all of those people who've got members will have to charge this out to their members. Now, before everybody gets frightened, I believe that through lobbying, we've made it people with a turnover of more than $1 million, and I've mentioned this before. So most of you, 99.9% of you, will not be included in this, or at least that was the thinking when it went out in the white paper. But what the big professional bodies are saying is, so that means that those of us who are professional, have got codes of ethics and are paying annual fees, will pay, when in fact it is quite widely agreed that over 60% of the problems that are caused by the 30% of people who are not a member of anything.
Absolutely.
And it's a difficult one, but government doesn't seem to be listening much at the moment to anybody who's trying to save money, other than themselves. They do want their money. But
this happened with
has actually moved forward now to 2022-23 rather than 2022. So it gives us a bit more time to keep some lobbying up. But it's something you've got to be very careful with.
I mean, when we put in our response to the improvements in tax agent services, ICB took the decision, as did obviously, as you would expect, most of the other professional bodies, that to become a tax agent, you needed to be a member of a professional body. But unfortunately, the 30% that are not members of a professional body also had some heavy lobbying going on, and that's gone on the back burner again at the moment, I think, and it's not, I don't think that's going to go through.
Yeah, because the problem is that the government is actually saying to us that if members employ people who are not qualified and something goes wrong, they shouldn't have employed those people. But when unqualified people can set themselves up in business, it makes it even more difficult for us to run businesses. And it's got to be sorted. And I think the thing is, they've got so much else on their plate at the moment, it's not going to be sorted immediately. However, I have a suspicion that the holding back until 2022-23 is so that some of these other peripheral arguments can be fully assessed and impacted. And it's something we're lobbying for, because they're always worried that if we get a license to print money, basically, because you've got to be registered with us if you want to do the work, we'll all start putting our fees up. But safeguards could be put in there to protect people.
One of the interesting questions that came out in a fairly recent consultation that I was involved in, it was an online one, chat, was that, do we consider that HMRC have sufficient powers? Well, the view to that was that, well, yes, the powers are there, they are limited, and they are looking at extending the powers that HMRC have to bring people to account, these non-representative tax agents, but they're actually not using the powers that they've got yet. And until they start using those powers and enforcing them such that all tax agents become possibly equally liable with their clients for example, getting the SAT return wrong, self-assessment return wrong. At the moment, it's the responsibility of the customer, of the taxpayer, to get that right. Now they've been looking at whether it should also be the responsibility of the tax agent. And for those non-representative tax agents who are covered by HMRC, our question was, well, what are HMRC going to do? We can impose penalties, investigations, we can hold disciplinary actions within our own professional bodies. But what is HMRC going to do? And that's the one I'm still fighting at the moment. So
I understood that they were actually making moves now to do something about that, because if, again, going back to anti-money laundering, they have got a lot more power, and in fact, we'll publish it in the next newsletter. But they are taking away people's license to practice, and then they can't go anywhere else. That's it. That's the end. And people don't cooperate, or they're doing stuff wrong. And I mean, as far as I can see, nobody can really argue with that. But I agree that if an unqualified person, well, where the difference is, I think, if an unqualified person does something that's wrong, yes, they should be held responsible. What I think is a bit unfortunate at the moment is that if a business uses somebody who's unqualified, then we've had cases in the past where the judge has said, well, you're responsible because you were stupid enough to use somebody that was not qualified. And a businessman said, well, I thought they were qualified. They told me they were. And it's one of the things that we're being asked to do increasingly now is police websites to make sure that people don't use our crest when they shouldn't do. I think last year we had about 5 or 6 people that we caught. Unfortunately, the law says that the first thing we must do is write them a letter and say cease and desist. So if they stop, that's the end of it. We can't do anything more to them. The problem with that is that I believe they gain pecuniary advantage, because if they say, oh, I'm a certified bookkeeper, I'm an ICB bookkeeper, and they get clients, then they just turn around to us and say, yeah, all right, I'll take it down. They've got their clients, they've got their business, and it's wrong. But it's a very, very difficult one to argue and a very difficult one to police, to be honest.
And nothing to stop them starting up again in another name to re-advertise. Following on, sorry, just picking up a few questions coming in. Judy's come back. The query we had earlier on the HMRC chat and helplines. Judy says, hi, I was on an HMRC chat and asked re the helplines being open at weekends, and the answers came back, no, HMRC don't believe that their helplines are open during the weekend. So that's the answer to that one. And Judy said as well, when I worked at Sainsbury's, I got holiday pay for bank holidays, and Mondays were not my normal working day. Okay. Susanna says, I thought statutory entitlement was 28 days, including bank holidays. Therefore, if bank holiday is not a working day, they would get their pro rata entitlement to take on a different day. The trouble is, it's 28 days if you work full time. If you work part time, you get a pro rata on 28 days. You still get 5.6 weeks off, but of course you only get 5.6 weeks at 3 days a week, say. So that's why they're pro rataing the bank holidays, I think. Not an easy one to get your head around.
No, I think
Pauline's come back and with her question on subcontracting and said, thank you, Gary. I'll definitely check whether they have AML supervision and PII insurance. I think that's very wise, Paul. I think you should be doing that anyway. So
yeah, I was going to extend it though, because we are finding on our discussions with practices that a lot of you are now taking on people who are not qualified. Now, this might be because you actually want to train them up. You're going to turn them into students, and we have quite a large number of our students who are actually employed within practices, within firms. But a lot of people, which I can't quite understand really, because you know that we're all very tough on the exams with you. You have to reach a very high pass mark. You have to have your right insurance. You've got to jump through all the hoops, etc. And we do make it tough for you. And most of you, when we talk to you, say, yeah, well, that proves now I know what I'm doing and I'm good at what I do. But then you start to practice and you employ somebody that isn't to that level. And if you're not training them up, or even if you are training them up, to then put them out into one of your clients is asking for trouble. And we've had a couple recently. I mean, we had a person recently who was unfortunately taken ill, and as part of their TOOP, they handed over to an unqualified person, and the unqualified person has been an unmitigated disaster. And although there's a TOOP, not TOOP, so I'm not talking about TOOP, I'm talking about COPE, our COPE program. Yeah, although the COPE is in place, you are still responsible. And this person has just held their hands up and said, oh, well, I'd never done it before. I was doing it to help you out. And we're in a difficult situation, but there is going to be a substantial amount of compensation claimed by at least 2 of, I think, half a dozen clients that are complaining at the moment. I think some have decided that it was because of an illness and therefore they don't want to make life worse for the member. But you've got to employ the right people. Well, I don't know, really. It's like you buying a brand new car and then letting somebody drive it who's never passed their test. Why? Still, never mind.
Okay. On the chat line, Sue's come back and said a very basic VAT question, Jackie. Post-Brexit, do we still reverse charge service invoices such as those from LinkedIn, Google, etc., etc.? I realise it's a low-tech question compared to some of the complex import-export, but it affects most of my clients. I have to say, Sue, I'm going to have to get back to you on that one because I've got so confused about this. I think it's going to depend on where the service is based and where the invoices come from. And I think the answer is you still treat it as a reverse charge. But I am going to put a question up on the Brexit Hub on this because I've got a about 5 questions came in yesterday on this, so I'm going to try and put an answer together and put that up there.
I'm going to ask you a top one, completely unprepared for this, Jackie.
Go on.
One of our members has said the client normally has a Christmas party, that the amount they spend on the party is below the limit. This year, because they couldn't hold a Christmas party, they had a virtual party, and everybody was sent a box of goodies.
Yes.
Is that taxable or
it is
not?
No, it's allowable for tax. We checked this because the rules changed about 2 or 3 weeks before Christmas originally, and I've got a feeling it was either Kirsty or Nikki that brought this up actually before Christmas. If they're online, they'll remember. And it definitely said that virtual parties were not tax deductible, and they must have got a deluge of complaints because they changed the rule, and providing that it followed the normal rules of Christmas entertainment for the party, so it's got to be less than £150, everybody's got to be invited, and you actually sent some goods out, it is tax deductible. However, we've also had a member whose client, instead of running a virtual party, gave all their staff vouchers to spend in the shops now as Christmas entertainment. Now that is not tax deductible, and even if it was, because the amount of the voucher was £200 and not £150 or under £150, the whole lot was taxable. Not only was it taxable for the employees, but they've also got to pay national insurance on it because it counts as a cash voucher because it can be changed for anything. So it's not a benefit, it's income, it's salaried income. So yeah, but the actual virtual party, I think, is fine. At least I hope it was, because I know several people that were involved in things like that, so our members. So yeah, I know several people who've asked that question already. So I'm pretty certain that yes, that's a tax deductible allowance.
And I think one of the other ones that we were discussing earlier this week, Jackie, I mean, was where I think it was a farmer was employing people for fruit picking and was paying them, but was giving them free accommodation.
Yes, now I think this is also because we were talking about the extension of COVID and extending a fixed contract because these people are European and their countries are closed, they can't go back. I think the free accommodation counts as a benefit towards their hourly rate, because last time I did some calculations on this, if you are providing accommodation as part of the work, you can use, there is an allowance that you can use, which means that you might drop the minimum wage below what it currently says. So it's £8.21 if they're over 25 at the moment, I think. Now, what you have to do is you have to work out the allowance, and there is a fixed allowance on gov.uk, and I think it's something like £7 a day or something. So what you do is you take what you're paying them, you add on the allowance for accommodation, and then you work out their hourly rate, and it has to be above them at the minimum wage or above. So again, it depends on what's happening with that. Yeah, but that particular one, I think, Gary, is also involved in furlough claims as well, which has made the calculations more complex. Yeah.
We've had a few over the last couple of weeks. It makes life interesting, doesn't it?
It certainly does, yes. We have a lovely question here from Hamza. Hello, Hamza. It says, please, how can I enroll for membership? Well, the answer to that, Hamza, is you can do it online on our website. If you go onto the website and you look at becoming a member, there are some links there, and it depends whether you want to join us as a student or apply to join us as a member through the exemption route. And you can do that online. You can put the application in online, and one of our membership team will be in touch with you.
Yeah, good. Great to have you, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully that all goes through very quickly, Hamza.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, we a lot of people wanting membership at the moment, which is really good. But yeah, it's a good time.
Oh, Nicola, when food, which is normally 0 rated, is sold in a gift set, does that become vatable or stay 0 rated? I.e. a spice gift pack, just spices in a box. I have a nasty feeling that as it's in a gift box, it's going to be vatable. because it's not just fresh food you're buying, it's been boxed and it's been gift wrapped. I just have this funny feeling that that might be standard rated, but I'll be corrected on that one.
Yeah, many years ago when I was working in publishing, I remember that we were posting publications out and not charging any VAT on the postage. But when we had a VAT inspection, they said, hold on a minute, you're adding that as a service. And a service is vatable. Now, thankfully, we hadn't been doing it for long and they were pretty lenient on it. But yeah, I'm glad I hadn't been doing it for 10 years and they suddenly came back with £1 million worth of fee or something. But
yeah, because so, it acts as a delivery charge rather than postage, and delivery charge is vatable. Sarah Douglas has come back and she and I have had this conversation this morning. And yes, Sarah, I will put this out there for you. Jackie, could you stress to bookkeepers that they really need to watch your videos for a few VAT rules? Oh, thanks for that, Sarah. I am concerned that some are not taking it seriously enough. Well, interestingly enough, on my HMRC meeting this morning, I'm not sure if I mentioned this actually, we were talking about Brexit and these helplines and all the information they're bringing up. And I actually went online, and this is something that I had not picked up before Christmas. So if I hadn't picked it up, it's bottom that a lot of members haven't picked it up. That we were talking gaily about being able to export at 0 rate. And on the second webinar I did on exporting, I talked about the rules for exporting. We can export it at 0 rate. And if you look at the HMRC's website, it is very clear that if you are exporting goods, you can export them at 0 rate. Stop. And it doesn't say anything else. Now, what the HMRC website doesn't say is that in Europe, they've got to pay import VAT to get the goods into Europe. So as a seller, our responsibility does not stop with us simply selling things at 0 rate, because if we do that and we don't agree with our freight forwarder or shipping company, be it Royal Mail, DHL, UPS, or whoever we're using, that the import VAT is being taken care of, the goods will not be released at the other end, and the individual that you're selling to is going to have to pay import VAT before they can get the goods. So yes, this is getting more and more complex. And I have asked HMRC about this, and I said I accept that HMRC is there for the UK VAT return only, but I think there should be something which points you in the direction that yes, we can export at 0 rate, but you might have to arrange for EU VAT to be paid. And they've asked me to put my concerns in writing to the chair of the board, which I will do probably now first thing Monday morning, and they're going to pick up on that. So hopefully we'll get some more up on gov.uk, but when, I don't know.
I've just received another report for comment as well about the tax simplification. Lord Risby, who has worked with ICB for many, many years and hosted a couple of events for us in Parliament, actually. He said, do you have anything to say about the new rules or the new white paper on tax simplification? Because he wants to raise it in the House of Lords. So I'll be handing that over to you as well shortly, Jackie, because I've got mine.
My way, yeah.
Well, yours will probably be different. And certainly yours will be more informed than mine. But anyway, okay. Are we sort of getting to the end there?
I think we're there. I think we've answered. Oh, right. Nicola's come back. Nicola's come back on the VAT on the gift box and said, yes, that's what I was thinking. Thank you. Good. I'm glad we're thinking on the same lines, Nikki.
Lucy Brown, I thought gift vouchers were okay for trivial benefits as long as they can't be exchanged for cash. Is this not correct?
If it's given as a gift to a now trivial benefit, if you are buying these gift boxes and giving them to your staff as part of the virtual Christmas present, then it's a trivial benefit. If it's below £50, and it doesn't happen too often, it can count as a trivial benefit, but there will still be VAT on that. So anybody who's buying these goods in and then giving them to their staff for the virtual Christmas party will have to pay VAT, but you probably can claim the VAT back as part of your next VAT return. Oh, this is getting so complicated.
I know.
Can't cope with this anymore. It's just been one of those weeks, sorry.
Well, look, next week, obviously on Monday, we've got Mike. He's still got a lot to talk about. We're still getting hundreds of people tuning in, but we're also getting hundreds of people who are not tuning in. So obviously we're presuming you think you know it all. It would be useful to see a few more of you. I can't force anybody to do it, and you might be getting your information elsewhere. But Mike is covering the things that seem to be missing when he and his fellow inspectors are going to see practices. We had a discussion with Steve Hardwick, who's our Director of Compliance, and Jane, who is our Head of Intelligence and Inspections. The whole of practice risk assessment, which you're required to do, and I hate these risk assessments, but you have to write down how you've assessed the risk of your practice being used for fraudulent or money laundering activities. It is a difficult one. We're going to try and come up with something which is more of a questionnaire where you answer specific questions rather than have to sit down and, we give you a template, we tell you what's supposed to be in there, but we're trying to just make it a little bit more prompting so that you're answering more direct questions and specific questions. So we are going to be working on that. But there are still a lot of things out there that people aren't doing and claiming they've never heard of or don't understand or anything else. But so, just make sure. Yeah. I know you're busy times at the moment, and you've got so many calls on your time. Many of you are schooling your kids at home and all the rest of it. But you do need to look through the guidance and just make sure you've got it right.
Angela said, I can't do Monday, so I need to remember to watch later. Yes, I would say to watch later, because I actually listened in on Monday, and it was actually on terrorist financing. And I must admit, I went into that thinking, well, we don't finance terrorists, and we haven't got a terrorist organization. But I can't remember the name of the gentleman that did it from Scotland. Name's gone. Was saying that it follows on from you having to know where the income's coming from. Because there are obviously some very high risk areas and things, and it follows on that if you don't know exactly where your client's income is coming from, then it could very well fall into any one of these categories, which I hadn't really thought it through to that extent yet. So I found that the information on that was very interesting. Yeah.
I watched a program which was something to do with the National Crime Agency.
John Duffy, yes, thank you.
John Duffy, right. And they were just saying that people are too believing, and all of the money that comes from trafficking of people has to go through something. So most of it goes through businesses. So all of a sudden you have a small corner shop with a turnover of $1 million or something or other, and nobody questions it. And as professionals, if you're doing the book, you need to say, well, hold on a minute. How on earth are you covering this sort of turnover with a shop of this size? And, it's things like that. It's just thinking a little bit beyond what's presented to you to make sure that it's right. So anyway, we don't try. I try not to frighten people with money laundering, because the chances of you coming across it are actually still very slim. But you have got to be aware that it does happen, and sometimes from the strangest sources. And so, all backs need to be covered, as they say.
Friends and Alistair asking, does anyone know where Mike on Monday's sign-up link is? Actually, they're on the ICB Facebook link and also on the YouTube channel. I have to say, if you put in ICB TV on YouTube, you do get quite a few other ICB TVs as well as ours, but it is there. And I think he was number 108, I think. So, and going back every Monday, they are all there. I do know that we're looking at making some of these slightly easier to find, Gary. I saw something the other day. I know Amy's looking into that.
The trouble is that there's over 100 of them, and they get mixed up anyway. And ICB, 3 initials, you've got the Internet Commercial Bank, you've got all sorts of other people, and there's several religious groups who do lots of webinars as well.
There's also a load of music videos on there under ICB TV that I found the other day as well.
Oh, well, that's a bit of fun. We've got some of our members who sing, so that's good. So anyway, Monday is Mike, and obviously Friday next week. In between that, if we think there's something coming up which you need to know about, we will email you. So, if there's something important coming up, you'll be emailed. And whether you look at it live or catch up with it later, it's there. We're only giving you stuff which we think is important to you. And it's up for you to pick and choose or cherry pick and decide which bits you need. And
Gary, I've had 2 requests come in this week for Technical Tuesdays, which we're starting hopefully on the 26th. I'm not doing next Tuesday, but from the following Tuesday. I think we're looking at starting up some Technical Tuesdays. It may not be every week, it may be every other week or even once a month until we really get going. but I've been asked for a one on business expenses for the self-employed, what's claimable, what's not. And also I've been asked for one which I have been trying to escape for a very long time, and that's TOMS, which is the Travel Operators Management
Margin scheme.
Margin scheme.
Yeah.
And that will happen, but it may be someone else that does that one.
Well, I think the idea of Technical Tuesdays is that it can be shared amongst technical experts, because there are a lot of technical
Certainly
things
not all me.
we need to know about. There was something specific we were thinking of next Tuesday, but never mind. I'm not sure what it is. But yeah, the idea is that we're putting together a plan now so that we will have, hopefully, 5 programs a week, one every day, so that people, again, they don't have to spend 5 days glued to their iPads or whatever. They can pick the bits that they want. But there is such a lot of information, and every time we mention something, it brings 4 or 5 questions out of it, as we see today. So yeah, we are working on that. Experts tend to be a little bit overrun at the moment. And we were doing a webinar recently, and the person doing the webinar was suddenly invaded by their 3 children. And so, that all had to stop. So had that been live, it could have been a bit more difficult. So we have to be careful on these things. But yeah, we're trying. As always, if any of you have got any ideas of things that you like covered, as Jackie said, people have mentioned some things to her already, we'll do our best to help with that. At the moment, we're making it up as we go along, thinking, oh, well, that sounds important, or we think somebody's asking questions on that. And also, we take a brief note of what it is you're ringing for when you ask for a technical query, when you have a technical query, and we're picking up things there and saying, oh, well, that's funny, that's been asked 4 times now in the last couple of weeks, so that's what we can build in as well. So, right, Jackie, I think we probably ought to wrap up there.
There's a quick one from Donna. Donna, I think the answer to your question, I'm not going to read it, is I think it's still coming along. But we will update you on that as soon as we've got some definite information. So yeah, no, I think that's everything we've covered today, Gary.
Yeah, I mean, there's a fair amount there, so that's good. I'm hoping that you all enjoyed it. You got something out of it, and if you're watching this over the weekend, nice of you to join us still, and whenever. And the interesting thing is that people are still watching bits from the summit, which is really great. So we're looking at doing far more with that sort of stuff at the moment. And the other thing is some of the people who are not members of ICB who keep saying, how am I going to get hold of this fantastic stuff that you're putting out to people? We're going to be having a vehicle where you're going to have to pay for it, I'm afraid, because you're not paying a membership fee, so we can't give you everything for nothing, but there will be an avenue for that. And so we give you a couple of tasters, a bit like the Times when you read now and it says this, you just get to the juicy bit of an article and it goes into faded print and then says you now need a subscription. Well, we're going to be doing the same, because our members, we're trying to keep their fees down to the minimum, as always. And if we've got to do that, we can't start bringing in all and sundry. And there is a certain organisation who obviously isn't giving its members much. And, we're getting more and more of them coming through. Lovely to have you with us. You ought to perhaps try and join if you think you're good enough to take our exams. Absolutely wonderful. We'll take you in. Actually, that's an argument I had with one this week. I passed a set of exams. I said, yes, but you passed the wrong set of exams, so you've got to sit ours. And she wasn't very happy, but life is like that, I'm afraid. We only want the best. So thank you once again, Jackie, or twice again this week, I shall say.
You're welcome.
Yesterday. And
have a good weekend, everyone.
Yeah, have a lovely time. Look, be very careful. I know I keep saying that, it's because I'm getting old, I'm feeling fatherly, but you've got to be careful out there. Do as you're told when it comes to staying away from everybody and being careful and washing your hands and keeping your distance and all the rest of it, because you're very important to us. We want you with us for a lot longer yet. And hopefully, Bill Gates, apparently, who has prophesied absolutely everything that's going to happen, that was going to be an airborne disease, that AstraZeneca were going to be the first people to come up with a jab, has now said that the majority of our problems should be over by spring, but it will be Christmas before we get back to normal. And international business travel will never get back to what it was. So it'd be interesting to see if he's right about everything. I certainly hope he's right about the spring bit, because I'm looking forward to getting out and meeting the family and getting the sun on the head.
Absolutely.
But anyway,
yeah.
Thank you very much. Bye, Jackie.
Thanks,
bye,
bye.
everybody.
Bye
See you
all. Have a
soon.
good
Bye.
weekend.